This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hi, everybody. Cheryl Kay with Unleashed, and I have a surprise for us today. Guess who is back? Jerry.
Hi, Cheryl.
I'm so glad you're back.
Oh, it's good to be back.
I missed you, and
it's nice to be back. It's really nice to be back. I enjoy being here. It's always a pleasure, and this is going to be a wonderful time for me to talk about my Marty. And it's good for me to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Anytime.
Oh, okay.
So we'll tell our listeners what happened, and we'll explain that we're still going to keep Marty's bark because, number one, it's the most perfect bark there is.
It was the most perfect. And don't forget, it took almost 2 years for him to remember how to bark as a dog because he had been in the shelter for so long. He really had withdrawn. So I'm glad you're keeping his bark because it's a great bark.
Yeah, and it'll put a smile on your face whenever you hear it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the best memories that I could keep is that wonderful bark and that sweet face.
Yeah, I mean, you know, grief is grief, and it comes in many different forms. And, you know, we as pet lovers, we understand the grief for a pet. We've all been there. You know, it's the most painful thing in the world. And everybody deals with it different. I make my decision the night before. I like to pull Band-Aids. I can't, you know, there's some people, they'll try anything to save their pet.
Right.
You know, if, of course, it's savable.
Yes,
but,
of course.
But, you know, like when my Ricky went and I had to put him down, I decided on Friday night. I mean, he wasn't well. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me on Friday and I made the decision and I did it because, you know, who am I keeping him alive for, me?
And you know what, that is such an important thing to remember, and especially for viewers to understand, there does come a time when you then become selfish in keeping a pet that is definitely having a lot of problems and suffering. And it was very hard for me to make that decision, kind of like you said, the day before, and I did the Friday before and then waited till Monday. But it was a comfort for my vet to assure me that it was the most loving thing I could do was to let go of Marty at a time that he still had some dignity, and that and because he wasn't on his last breath, so to speak. You know, he had a lot of medical issues. I had him for almost 3 years. The skin condition that he had was under control, and then it just went berserk. And it came to a time that he just, it was very difficult. The medicines, the steroids didn't work anymore. The antibiotics didn't work. And so, as you said, you come to that decision, but it was hard. But I do have a sweet story to tell about Marty that I didn't tell you, so you're hearing it for the first time also. So there did come a time that I realized that, and my vet, and we talked about it, and that Marty's struggle was very insurmountable. There was no more treatment that could be done. And I did have a weekend. And I think that, you know, I think that was a gift to have that weekend to kind of come to terms with saying goodbye to him. So the day before, on a Sunday, now Marty had a lot of food allergies, so the poor guy was always on a very strict diet. I gave him nothing but salmon-based food, and he loved. He would sneak in the kitchen and grab a chicken cutlet or whatever. I mean, gosh, I have so many funny stories about Marty and food because he was very food aggressive. But he never had anything but the salmon. So the weekend that I knew that this was going to be his last weekend, my boyfriend actually asked if he could come and say goodbye to Marty as well. And he said, I'd like to go to the store and get 3 steaks and have a dinner with Marty. And I kind of thought about it. I said, that's probably the sweetest thing that I've ever heard.
That's
so
cute.
Was it
Dinner with Marty.
Dinner with Marty. So I made these steaks on the grill, and of course I made some side dishes for us. And we set the dining room table, and Marty's never allowed ever to go into the dining room or eat table scraps or eat, anything other than his own food. And I set candles on the table.
Oh, God. Oh, I love it. and what a send-off.
We opened a bottle of wine, and we had Marty come sit at the dining room table right at our feet, and we cut an entire steak and handed it on his plate on the floor, and spent about an hour enjoying that last meal. That dog was so excited. It was one of the sweetest memories that I will keep in remembering
that's so sweet. That really is sweet.
It was very sweet. So I think having the time, and I think when we, oh my gosh, I can remember the week after. I mean, this is now almost a month ago, so I'm okay to talk about it now. But the week and the weeks that followed, the hollowness in the house.
It's empty.
It's hollow. It's more than empty. It's so, I kept on thinking it's hollow. Everything has an echo because Marty's not absorbing. He's not here absorbing my love and my energy. It just was so empty without him.
That's why I think with pets, it's, of course, we grieve. I mean, we lose people and it's devastating.
Yes.
But it's very different with a pet because, number one, they depend on us and really we depend on them.
Equally. Absolutely.
I have never lived without a pet.
I haven't either. And I think that's what makes the bond so great with your pet is that it's a reciprocity, an emotional reciprocity. I give to you, you give to me. I give to you, you give to me. It's always a giving and a taking, and a giving and a taking. And even human
they give us a lot, pets. They really do.
Oh my gosh.
I know that we give them, but
they give us just as much.
Right.
I agree.
And sometimes more.
Oh, yes.
Unconditional love. And it's just, it teaches us so much. I mean, my folks had a collie before I was born. Mm-hmm. So I always had a dog that I can remember, but it does teach you things and the grief you feel or the missing them. I mean, even when we're not with them. I mean, how many times have we all said, I think I want to cuddle up and binge watch TV with my dog or cat.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like that. It is an unconditional love, and for those of us who have the joy of sharing our life with pets, and I have had 3 different dogs over my lifetime that have each entered my life at a stage when I needed that particular dog. It's so funny how that happens. And
for a season, for a reason.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And it does, it brings an element and a joy that is beyond really words. And the grief does create a hollowness, but at the same time, in the last month, I have learned to envelop that hollowness with the memories of this dog. And something will trigger a memory. I'll open my front door and I expect Marty to be right, because he would sit at that front door. If I left, he wasn't on his bed. He'd sit at that front door. So when I opened the front door, I could feel him there. He'd get up, and I open my front door and I keep thinking I'm going to feel his body waiting for me. And I find that in the beginning, of course, it brings you so much sadness, but I find myself smiling more now, thinking about him.
Right, because it's better to have loved and lost than never to have before.
They just very special.
We all go through it. I always tell people the best place to bury a pet is in the heart of the owner.
In the heart of the owner. You sent that to me. Yeah, you texted that to me when you found out that Marty passed.
They give us the best days of their life and one really sad day.
Yes.
That's it. I mean, they're wonderful, whether it's a dog or a cat or a horse.
Oh, my gosh. It doesn't matter what pet it is.
It's a different kind of bond than a husband, a wife, a child.
Oh, yes.
It's different, it's more equal footing because you're really pals.
But you're really pals, and it doesn't come with the great intricacies of human relationships, which are more difficult because they're much more complex. Every personality is different. Every human being that you love is different. None of us are the same. But the ease at which you can love a pet it's not complicated. It's pure. It's authentic. It's just right there. It is what it is. You don't have to be a certain way one day or be quiet or listen. You just have to be. And I think that's what's so just exhilarating about that relationship with a pet. It's not complex. It's not a human relationship, which is very complex and certainly very deep and can certainly be very loving, but takes certainly more work, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But in any case, I think you got an idea.
It's a different kind of
effort. It's so different.
You know, you see now a lot of people do these bucket lists. When their pet gets older, they're going to take them here.
Yeah.
And, first of all, there's nothing like a road trip with a person or a pet.
Or a pet. And don't they, Marty loved the car. He loved the car. He'd rather be in the car than any place else. And that was the other thing. I took him up to, we have a place called Carter's Mountain, which has a magnificent view of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where we live. And the Sunday before the dinner, I just had him by myself and drove up to Carter's Mountain and was able to get him out of the car enough to walk around and for him to just look at those beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains and
whiff that air.
And whiff that air and just have that image of him outdoors and thinking that he is going to return to the beautiful place of nature from which he came.
Right.
And it was a wonderful opportunity to do that. I did not have that chance with my other dogs.
No, I was going to say
I did not have my chance. No,
right, and you had somebody else do it.
I did. I just couldn't do it. And in the case of my Bonnie, I did hold on a little too long, I think. And but that was a different stage of my life, and I was at a different place. And we do better when we know better.
They were three of them. So.
And there were three of them, and it was
and
just they all were basically at the same time. So that was hard. But I think we need to take a break at this time, and
we'll be
right back.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynavite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynavite.
Everything we tried failed except the Dynavite.
Pick up 2 bottles of Super Mega Fish Oil.
Get the 3rd bottle free. Packed with omega-3, DHA, and EPA fatty acids.
Super Mega is great for your dog's immune system, healthy skin, and soft, shiny fur.
Dogs love it. Try Super Omega Fish Oil.
Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynavite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Has your pet ever suffered from digestive issues, anxiety, or joint pain? We want to address these issues and more with high-grade CBD oil from Alpha, made specifically for your furry friends. Using Alaskan salmon oil as a carrier, Alpha Pet's 500 CBD oil is lab-tested for quality, consistency, and safety. Plus, we are giving Pet Life Radio listeners 25% off and free shipping with code PL25 for a limited time. So visit myalphacbd.com/dogs now. That's myalphacbd.com/dogs. Because your furry friends are family.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Hi, everybody. We're back, and today we're talking a little bit about grief and when we lose a pet. And Geri was explaining, losing Marty.
And how different it was from my other pets.
Well, first of all, this was your dog alone.
Yes.
Where that was more of, the other
family
dogs
dog.
Family dog.
Yes.
And they were a group.
Yes,
amongst themselves.
Yes, they were.
So Marty really had you, and you had Marty.
Right. Yes.
And that,
makes a difference.
It's true. At different times, in different reasons, we relate differently to whether it's a pet or people.
Yes.
I mean, when I had my cat Sandy, who I found in New York City, she came out of a building and she followed me across 7th Avenue, and I figured she'd be safer, outside of the city than loose in the city. And she used to follow me when I walked my dog. And I had her for about 21 years.
That's a long time.
Right. And I had to
That's
put
a
her
long
to sleep
time.
on St. Patrick's Day. And I buried her where she always sat, like next to my chimney. I guess it was warm from the night before. And I've buried all of my cats. Now it's a big thing. And with the last cat I had to put down, Ricky, I painted his paw the morning of, and then
and made the print.
And made a print
I
on
know,
it, and I framed it.
Yes, I have Marty. I didn't do it, but my vet was.
Yeah, they do all kinds of things
They did
now.
it at the vet, and when he sent a wonderful condolence card, it had Marty's paw print on the inside, and so I've kept that. Again, as I said, the difference here was certainly the opportunity to have a whole weekend to say goodbye.
Yes.
And that does make such a difference. So kind of curious, maybe some listeners can talk about and tell us about how they said goodbye to their pets and what helped them through that process. As I said, I think...
there's greeting cards for when you lose your pet.
Of course.
It's a big thing now. People are out there. Nobody has to hide it anymore.
No, I think people understand that the emotion, I think we understand that the emotion is the same. It's not, it's only a pet.
Right. That doesn't fly anymore.
It doesn't, of course not. But maybe 40 years ago, 30 years ago, people got,
they were the pet, but they really are family.
Right. But
I consider my two pets my family.
Yes. And so we recognize that now. And so we acknowledge when somebody loses a pet, how dear that animal was.
It is very painful.
I got flowers. I got books. It was just lovely. The people that acknowledged that I was in pain.
Empathy. We've all been through it.
Yes.
And that's the key.
Yes.
That we recognize in each other.
Yes.
It's unfortunately your turn now, but they only live for so long.
No, I know.
And we don't really know in some cases, especially when you adopt at a shelter or
what their background is. We certainly
do not know.
We do not know a lot about Marty. And
I've had only my two dogs. I guess we got from a breeder. When I was younger,
the collie.
A collie,
yes,
right? He was like a show dog.
Well, he was.
I've
seen pictures of him. He was gorgeous,
a stunning dog. I learned how to walk on him, and then I had a poodle who was, from the devil. But he was wonderful. But, he got trained, and then, the guy wanted to show us how great he trained him, and a kid rode by on a bicycle, and that was the end of Brandy. He was gone. And then,
You never found him?
We found him, meaning he just didn't listen.
Oh, he just didn't listen. Okay.
Like
I was
stay
going to say, oh my
was
gosh.
not stay. Stay meant,
no.
I'm going to chase that boy on a bike.
Well, you have to understand in the mind of the doggers, I was telling you about that book that I finished, One Good Dog. I loved it because the author wrote it one chapter as the mind of the human, the man in the book, and the alternating chapter was the mind of the dog, how the dog saw that little boy on the bike. And it's fascinating because she said she didn't want to stay. That dog saw it totally different than your command to stay, which is a fun book, by the way. And
oh, yeah.
It was sad at
what
the end.
What animals think.
Yes.
If we even knew.
And that's what this author was touching on, a little bit of how they're processing what we're looking at and what we're going through, how they're processing it. And it is a wonderful book.
Well, it's really something. I've been getting fascinated with parrots.
Parrots.
I've been getting fascinated with parrots. And
they live a very long time.
Right. They live 85 years, and they're like 4-year-olds. They're toddlers.
Now,
But
they
when
don't
you,
sell parrots anymore. I think the exotic birds are no longer. I thought there was.
well, you could get some. I think you get them, and you could probably get
Because
them
you almost
from
don't want a rescue. Absolutely.
from a rescue.
Oh, my
Because you
gosh.
have to will them. So talk about
Yes,
grief.
yes.
They
Oh, my
grieve for
gosh.
you.
That's right.
Because
Right.
they live 85 years. So anything you would get now,
It's going to certainly outlive us.
so you
at
have
this
to
stage
put it
of
in a
life.
will.
Yes.
Who's going to get this loudmouth,
Right.
destructive toddler?
Right.
But they are brilliant.
They're very smart.
I
Yeah.
saw one video with, I forget his name, but he's a superstar. That's how he talks about
Yeah,
himself.
yeah.
And he's fascinated with Alexa. He says, Alexa,
Oh, that's
turn off
funny.
the lights. And she
Oh.
says, okay. And then he says, Alexa, turn on the lights. And then he asks, Alexa, where do African birds come from? And she tells him.
That's fair.
And then he says, Alexa, tell me about Alexa. And then you could hear the owner in the background. They call them mommies and daddies. I mean, these birds actually scream, Mama, Daddy.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And he's saying, shut up. Because all he's doing, well, they're so active. They're just, I want a bath. I want a bath now. I want to go to sleep.
Well, they are, and that's why I'm glad you cannot buy these animals, which you never should have really been able to buy them. But there are certainly high numbers of them in shelters and in rescue
They're very
facilities.
good for people with PTSD.
They are
also,
excellent.
because they're very social.
They're
they
very-
want to be with you.
That's
if
right.
you have these birds,
Yes, you'd have
forget your life.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because the
That's
only
a
thing
big commitment.
is
Big commitment.
They want to be with you.
That's
they
right.
walk around. They take baths or
Yes.
showers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're demanding, but they're just so pleasant. When you listen to them. I don't have one.
No, I have owned cockatiels.
Same thing.
And they are just a delight and very affectionate.
Very
not a
kissy,
cockatoo,
kissy, kissy.
not a cockatoo,
I
not
love
the
you.
big one. No, not a cockatoo. I'm sorry, I've got it reversed. I owned the small bird, the cockatiel.
Right, but they talk.
No. The cockatoo is the big one, right?
Right, the white
Okay,
one, and
the
then there's
little one-
parrots.
and no,
There's African grays,
That's
but a
right.
cockatiel should talk.
No, I don't ever remember Sunshine talking. I have to ask my daughter Kate, but she would whistle and she would come on my shoulder and she would rub her face against my cheek. And it was the sweetest thing. But they are very wonderful pets as well. But certainly the parrots require a lot of work and a lot of attention.
A lot of it, and they're very destructive. I mean, on
They are.
anything.
They
And
are.
it's all about them.
Yes, and you have to. That's why I always bring up Best Friends. In Utah, which is the animal rescue place. I think I was totally shocked when I first went there and I saw the amount of parrots and big birds that were
Their
there.
owners died, and nobody wants them.
Well, not only did their owners die, many people years ago would get these exotic animals, had no idea the extent of work and interaction that they needed, and then they would just give them up. They would just not want to do it. And so I was always very surprised. I haven't been there in a couple of years now, but I would venture to say that they still have high numbers of those.
Well,
exotic
there's a lot of rescue
Yes,
organizations,
that
and
have
there's a place
birds.
in California that works specifically with veterans.
And that's a
Because
fabulous idea.
but there's fascinating because that one snowball, he dances, and they realized that the birds dance and feel the beat of the music because they could speak. That part of their brain is that's in minor birds, mockingbirds. They all have
that's
that.
fascinating.
They're able to feel the beat because even years ago, I remember seeing this bird, dancing to some rock.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
now it's like a big thing. He goes on shows and, they're very popular. I mean, I read a story recently about this one bird who could ride a bicycle, and he was in a show. So the people who knew him from the show knew exactly what bird that was and how old he was and a little bit of background on him.
Oh.
I mean, like they could be 20 years old. That means they got 65 more years.
Yes.
And you're in your 50s or your 40s.
Yeah.
And some of them have such conversations.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's got to be such an talk about a loss when you lose a pet
That talks to you.
That talks to you. I mean,
Like, good morning, I love you.
I know Marty would talk, but he did it in dog talk. I could tell what he wanted, but no, that's a very different interaction when you have a pet. That
some of those
actually
huskies talk.
Yes.
They could say "I love you," or they start howling.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way: you couldn't have a parrot unless you had a house.
No,
because they're loud. They have tantrums. But even some of these huskies, their music comes on. Sometimes they howl to it. It's just amazing. I think what's really beautiful now is we are starting to realize how much more these animals mean to our well-being.
Oh, psychologically,
whether it's a horse,
yes.
a pig, a goat.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And you could just see also with the way these animals interact with each other. There's all kinds of misfit combinations of animals that
course.
Just love each other.
And
There's a deer that gets along with a dog.
Yes.
And a fox with... That's what I think is beautiful. So, that even opens up more grief because if you lose an animal like that, I mean, there's some very... when an animal picks you, what about that duck that followed that guy home and won't leave him alone? And that little kid who's got a duck and the duck goes to school with him and he does sleepovers because he's imprinted on him.
That's it.
I saw the other day a Dalmatian was following around a spotted horse imprinting.
Right.
So, you just never know what happens with pets. When an animal, listen, you and Marty hit it off. How many other people do you think that came across Marty and they didn't hit it off?
Well, he was in the shelter a very long time. He was in the shelter several years.
Plus, he was a very big dog.
He was a very big dog, and he had skin problems to begin with right from the giddy up. So it's just that he came into my life at the time that I could be the best owner for him. And
you gave him a wonderful, wonderful life. I know he gave you, but really, for the last years, look, he wasn't in a shelter. Remember you told the story when you were walking him down the street and that woman stopped on a corner and said, "Is that Marty from the shelter?"
Yes,
I never saw him look so good.
No, she couldn't believe it. It was wonderful.
And you didn't abandon him, probably because of his skin issues. He was abandoned by his owners.
It could very well be.
A lot of people have, don't make the commitment with a pet, for sure. It is when you walk out of that shelter, that dog or cat or horse, or bird, or goat, or pig should be yours forever. Yes. There's no turning back. You wouldn't have a child and abandon them, normal people. There are a couple of wackos out there, but we're not referring to them.
We're not going there.
It's your pick.
No, it is.
You picked them, and it doesn't happen overnight, and I think that's really, we'll have to have a show on that sometime. People really maybe expect too much from the dog just got.
Well, and that's another show altogether, and I'm sure many people have discussed the psychology of why you want a pet and what you expect. Our expectations sometimes are not even realistic, and so then you get frustrated and you let go of a pet and take it to the shelter or worse yet, abandon an animal.
Or you get the dog on a Friday and by Sunday or Monday, the dog doesn't like me.
Right.
Hello.
Everything
you're
takes time.
You're a total stranger. I got to learn to trust you.
Exactly.
Trust is earned.
Exactly. And so that's the piece about the owner. What are you looking for and why do you want this animal? But that's a story for another time.
Not to go with your purse.
We're not filling. That's right. That's
right. Those little dogs. Nothing against little dogs.
No, nothing against little dogs.
It's not.
Whatever.
And then
right.
I don't want to get off on my pet peeves with it. They even have now a carriage for these dogs.
I know.
It's opened up a whole new thing.
I know. Well, say goodbye, Marty. And
Marty, we say goodbye, and when you bark, we'll listen to it from You'll Be Up Above, and we want to thank our listeners.
Thanks, Cheryl.
And,
thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And anybody who wants to tell us about their experience, reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. I want to thank Mark. Jerry, welcome back to the fold.
Thanks so
Let's
much.
have more shows.
We will.
And bye, everybody. And remember to live life unleashed.
Unleashed. Thanks, Cheryl.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.